Yeah, you're live.
Great. Good evening. This is a work session of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow. We are meeting, obviously, via teleconference, in this case with Zoom. We're doing so under the provisions of an emergency order that the governor issued over a year ago in response to the pandemic, which allows villages and municipalities in the state to meet in this manner rather than meet in person. Notice of this meeting was posted on the village website through emails and in the other places that we normally post such notices. In accordance with that, with the governor's order, I will now begin the meeting, but first we will do a roll call to ensure that we have a quorum. I'll begin with Trustee Gebler.
Here.
Trustee Rodriguez.
Here.
Trustee Gonzalez.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Scaglione.
Here.
And Trustee Andrus.
Here.
And we have a quorum. So we shall begin. First item on our agenda this evening is a continuation of our public hearing on the 2021-22 operating budget. I'll ask the clerk to please read the notice of the public hearing.
Please take notice, the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow hereby schedules the continuation of a public hearing to be held on Tuesday, April 20th, 2021 at 7 p.m. or shortly thereafter via Zoom to hear and consider comments from members of the public on the proposed 2021-2022 mayor's budget. The proposed mayor's budget is available on the village's website and/or at Village Hall. All residents and taxpayers are welcome to attend and be heard at said hearing by order of the Board of Trustees, April 1st, 2021.
Thank you, Ms. McCarthy-Tompkins. And we will begin. Mr. Giaccio, has anyone indicated that they wish to speak to the board on the matter of the public hearing?
Yes, we have first Daniel Conversor.
Mr. Conversor, you're up.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. I'll be as quick as possible. Let me get my meeting notes up here. Okay, so this year's budget, for those following along at home who haven't actually looked at the budget, the top line number is a $1.1 million spending increase. Kind of the two top dollar things in that are about $230K for the Department of Public Works staff raises and about $202,000 for the fire and ambulance retirement program, which are much needed program. I won't belabor all the other little niggles with the other, dollar amounts. They're listed in a report, which I will email to the trustees. Then kind of the big ticket item in general in our budget is the police department. And I encourage the trustees to carefully analyze the spending that we have there. 26 and a half officers, including the chief. Does our modest village really need that staffing level? I encourage us to look at that. And on top of that, there is a $475,000 in overtime. That seems like a lot, given the staffing levels we have and the size of our village. Then let's see, on the revenue side, long-term, I encourage us to work with our neighboring municipalities in the area. In the rest of the state pays property taxes on parklands and other properties like that. But in Westchester, in our area, we don't get paid for the Rockefeller Preserve and the Old Croton Aqueduct and things like that. So there has been bills put up in the legislature, and we should try to work to get that through. That would be, a help to us to some degree. Another big ticket item for the village outside of retirement programs, which is fine, is sanitation. And overall, do we really want garbage or more garbage? I mean, no. So then why are we subsidizing it? The village plans to spend almost $800,000 on employees, vehicles, gas, dumping fees, all to get rid of stuff. Wouldn't we be better off investing, that time and energy into things that we want, like more sidewalks, cleaner sidewalks, safer crosswalks, wheelchair ramps, and clearing snow at removing the snow from street corners? So we can dramatically reduce our sanitation costs one step at a time. First step is to stop spending property tax money on sanitation. We're subsidizing it by about $113,000 this year, moving money from the general fund to the sanitation fund. Next step is outside of downtown. We should be doing garbage pickup once per week and doing recycling, alternating which material we pick up each week. So alternating weeks first recycling pickup. And we did this during the COVID lockdown and it worked. So we should kind of revive that practice. Leaves need to be bagged. We are picking up loose leaves in certain neighborhoods, and that requires special machine and extra labor. And on top of that, the leaves clog the storm drains and foul the water quality. I hope we can use the automated trucks in more neighborhoods and also to pick up recycling. And probably the biggest thing we can do is to meter waste. Just like we pay for electricity and water, we should be paying for trash the same way. So we give a little economic cue to people to reduce their waste. And in other municipalities that have done this, they average around 40% reduction in garbage. And steps on that path include charging for bulk trash. We have a lot of renters in our village, and when people move out, they dump large quantities of apartment contents on the curb. And so you get a couple of those, and our garbage truck is going to have to drive all the way up to Peekskill and pay for dumping and drive back. That's real money. It adds up. Outside of downtown, residents can pay per bag for garbage in general. And then in downtown, we should be looking to be installing centralized submerged, on each block containers. They are out of the way, they're clean, and then everyone has one place to throw it. And then also it gives a way to meter the trash that you throw away into it. And that in the long term can help us meet our climate smart community goals and help us get points along the way to do that if we want to maintain our bronze status or try to level up to silver. And for example, if we do reduce our waste by 40%, we get 17 points toward the 250 needed to keep our bronze status. There's some more details in the written presentation I'll send you guys, and you guys can look at it, and I'll email that out later this evening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Mrs. Giaccio, anyone else like to address the board on the matter of the public hearing?
Bavia would like to speak.
Take it away.
All right, good evening, all. So I actually have a friend who cannot make it tonight. So I'll be playing their comments now.
Hi, my name is Jenny Kogan. I am a resident of Tarrytown, but because Tarrytown and Sleepy Hollow are so connected, I also wanted to share at this meeting tonight. I am with Chatter, a local group in Sleepy Hollow and Tarrytown dedicated to organizing people and community in both towns to feel more agency over village decisions. And so we took a survey on what values residents have regarding the budget. And the two most important values are community services and healthcare, even though those are some of the lowest allocated budget categories for the Sleepy Hollow budget. And because budget really shows what a community values, we really hope that Sleepy Hollow could reconsider the budget distribution and ask for more community feedback. Thank you so much, and we will follow up with more information about our survey findings. Thank you.
So like Jenny said, we'll be following up with the survey findings and recommendations as well. Thank you.
Bavia, what's her name again? I'm sorry, it's for the minutes.
Jenny Kogan, so that's Jennie, and then last name Kogan, Kogan.
Thank you.
And did you have any further comments? In that case, Mr. Giaccio, anyone else wishes to address the board on the matter of the public hearing?
We have Steve Tarkan.
Take it away, sir.
And then I'll go after.
Hello, my name is Steve Tarkan. I've been a Sleepy Hollow resident all my life, born and raised here. And I just wanted to speak tonight specifically on the budget. So I believe the Village of Sleepy Hollow has committed to transparent and inclusive decision-making processes in their comprehensive plan, including a quote unquote, more inclusive future for everyone in the village, and quote, engages the entire community, end quote, respectively. So the village has committed to addressing pre-existing racial inequities that were highlighted after the comprehensive plans were released. For instance, the mayor has stated after hate speech was posted that, quote, Sleepy Hollow is a diverse, tolerant community, and proudly so. Although these words are appreciated, it definitely isn't not enough. In order to be able to support the community members that needed the most, you must do more now, not just telling us what you want to do and how you want to help us, but showing us that you want to help us, and specifically showing us that Black Lives Matter. We often hear that budgets are moral documents, but the village budget currently does not reflect the values stated in the comprehensive plan and your subsequent statements on racial injustice. So that's why a group grassroots 10591 organization called Shatter conducted a budget survey among community members. And as was stated in Jenny's message, the results are really clear. There's a large discrepancy between the needs of the community and where our funding goes. And so it is especially important to ensure that the village budget priorities reflect the needs of the people as taxes continue to rise, further impacting and potentially even displacing community members who have just endured an economically difficult year. So in order for the village to best hold its own stated commitments and to ensure that the voices of all community members are being heard, we are asking for 1% of the budget to be reallocated to a pilot participatory budgeting program, and this program be dedicated to initiatives that specifically address racial injustice. We want to make clear that this isn't going to solve all racial injustice issues within our village. This is merely one of the first steps we hope to take to create a community of care and begin a process of reparations for historically marginalized folks in Sleepy Hollow. For the sake of time, this information will be forwarded to you over email. And in addition, there are sample resolutions and other resources that I can share with trustees as well. And lastly, I just want to urge everyone here tonight to take the time to learn about how to best serve marginalized and less fortunate residents. Please listen to our please acknowledge our experiences and knowledge, and realize that in order to progress as a whole, the village must be willing to change their outdated practices and actively work to dismantle systems of injustices that are in place. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you guys take a listen to my message.
Thank you for your comments, and we look forward to seeing the specifics of your proposal. Mr. Giaccio, anyone else care to address the board on the matter of the public hearing?
I thought Bavia wanted to speak again, but I don't see her hand raised. Do you want to give her an opportunity to say something?
While we're doing that, is there anyone else who wishes to address the board on the matter of the public hearing?
It's just Bavia, and she did raise her hand. She's on.
Okay, Bobby, you're up.
Hi there. Oops, sorry, let's close this. Okay. So my dad actually did want to speak, so I'm going to give him a moment as well. And he had his hand raised, but I don't think he saw it.
Hi, my name is Narendra Reddy, and I'm a resident of Sleepy Hollow. And I also support the creation of a fund that is 1% of the general fund budget that will be decided through the participatory budgeting process. I'll be giving the remainder of my time to Bhavya Reddy.
All right, so in terms of the budget processing itself, so I also support creation of a fund that is 1% of the village's budget to be decided through a participatory budgeting process that's devoted to racial justice. However, I'd like to also state that this is part of a larger issue around access within the community and about the village to living up to its stated values. So I'd like all of you to just look around, the Zoom room that you're in right now and ask who's missing. I'm glad that the village has finally sent out newsletters about the budget hearing and added an option for Zoom access, but it is unacceptable that you needed us residents to request this basic access multiple times before you would do so. You know better than this. The mayor stated at the last meeting that the budget is one of the most important things that the trustees do, but that would have been hard to tell from your email newsletter or from the limited options you originally provided for submitting input at the public hearing. And then when residents did write in requesting this, we are either ignored or lied to. This is not okay. According to the values section in your comprehensive plan, the village, quote, values its cultural and socioeconomic diversity and is committed to ensuring a more inclusive future for everyone in the village, and, quote, engages the entire community to promote social, economic, and environmental sustainability, end quote. You are not living up to these stated values, and these words are not enough. If access and inclusivity are truly values of this village, you shouldn't need residents writing in to ask for basic access, and you need to take responsibility for this now. I and other residents have previously written in, and the trustees responded on September 20th, 2020 that they would take action. However, little has been done to date. And look, I understand that COVID has brought you challenges and that you all have a lot going on. I know that you have a challenging role and that you are doing a lot of things behind the scenes. However, the village staff in particular receive a sizable portion of the budget, and you work for us. The way that the village is currently doing things leaves out Spanish speakers, leaves out people who do not check the website on a regular basis, leaves out disabled folks, leaves out residents who you choose to not like. If you truly care about everyone having access, here are 5 things you can do immediately using existing resources. The first, commit to hybrid meetings when you do return to Village Hall. Requiring residents to come into Village Hall excludes people who can't physically make it there. It excludes people with work, family, and school commitments. This is something that you already have done, I think, in the last fall. So I'd like you to commit to including Zoom access even when you return to Village Hall. Second, commit to having all email newsletters available in both English and Spanish. And please start by sending out a complete schedule of all the budget presentations so that everyone knows what exactly is happening and when the budget will be passed. I recommend checking out Austening's website if you need an example. Third, commit to having live interpretation and captioning available at all meetings by default. Your current approach excludes Spanish speakers and folks who are deaf or otherwise benefit from captioning. I know that there is an option for people to call ahead of time to request interpretation, but that is hidden on the website and it is not posted with every listing for the public meetings. Adding these will show all residents that the language spoken by at least half of residents is equally valued. 4, commit to equal standards for all residents for whose comments are acknowledged during the communications portion of your meetings. I'd like clarification on your policy of whose comments are read out loud. For instance, at the last meeting and at others, you have left out comments that I have sent, and I'm sure this is happening to other residents as well. I'm curious how you decide which residents' comments are worthy of mentioning in your communications section and which are not. If you are asking residents to send in emailed comments, especially during this budget process, please ensure that you're applying consistent policy to ensuring all are treated fairly in this village. And finally, commit to making the most of the website and template that you already have. I noticed that the village actually moved the calendar away from the front page since last fall. This is a step backward. Making the calendar email sign up more accessible cannot wait until you have a new assistant to the administrator. Take a look at Tarkan, which seems to use the same template you do. Again, all of these are within the scope of existing resources that the village already uses, but I bring them up again in case planning is needed throughout this budget process. And finally, I'd like to just say a quick thank you to Dan for speaking earlier and for your extensive analysis of the budget as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Giaccio, would anyone else like to address the board on the matter of the public hearing?
No other comments.
Okay. Somebody needs to be muted. If we could then move on to our work session agenda. What I will need first is either a motion to close a public hearing or a motion to adjourn the public hearing until our meeting next week. I'd prefer a meeting to adjourn our public hearing. I'm sorry, hang on one second. Ms. DiGiacomo.
Mayor, we must close the public hearing this evening due to a state law.
Okay, great. Thank you for correcting me on that. Then I'll need a motion to close the public hearing, and what we can also say in that is if anyone, since we know of some additional submissions that are going to come into the board that we just heard about tonight, to publicly say we will get those, we will read those. We of course have to adopt our budget before the end of the month. So there's not a lot of time left. So you're getting those in, please get them in to us right away. So we have an opportunity to review them as we continue to deliberate. So formally, we will close the public hearing this evening, and they will continue to listen to your comments as they come in.
Thank you.
Up and until we adopt the budget itself. So can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
Mayor, I move to close this public hearing on the budget with an additional period of time for those additional comments to come in, as you mentioned, ending on Monday, April 26th.
Okay.
For that additional period.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say or indicate aye.
Aye.
And that is unanimous. So the public hearing is closed until close of business next Monday, which would be the 26th. So look forward to your additional comments. Thank you all for commenting this evening. The first work session agenda item is an update on the zoning, the project to the effort to implement, consider, and then implement zoning changes in the village. We have engaged BFJ to assist us in that process, and we'll get an update this evening from Susan Favate and Simon Cates, or from Simon Cates and Susan Favate, whoever is going to go first. Welcome back.
I'll go first. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ken. I think Simon's going to pull up the presentation. We will try not to keep it long. I think you have more items on the agenda, so I know you want to get to those, but we did want to come back and brief you. We last met with our steering committee, I think it was only last week, but been making a lot of good progress. And so now is a good time to kind of touch base as we kind of move from the steering committee side of the study and bring it more into your purview, where we are going to be working more directly with the trustees as we move into the seeker process and ultimately toward adoption of the zoning. So Simon, if you go to the next slide, just to give you a sense of where we are in the timeline. We started late last year. We really started in earnest, I would say, in January. We've had 3 meetings now, basically once a month since February with the steering committee. And Simon met with you back in March. So we've done a fair bit of work since then. And coming back to you tonight, we do think that we probably need to come back to you in a couple weeks. We think that there's some things that you probably need to take a bit of time with and review, and we want to make sure that we've ironed out all those details. But but just looking ahead to kind of the ultimate conclusion of this project, we are aiming toward a public hearing date around June 8th, kind of working back from that or forward to that actually, and thinking about the timing of seeker. And you can see at the bottom of the timeline, we do assume several more meetings with you all, including one after the public hearing, where we assume that we'll need to kind of iron out any final revisions. But we are working toward what we think is an adoption by late June, perhaps early July, which would be consistent pretty much with the timeline that we've shown all along. So I think on the next slide, we talk a little bit more about the dates and what we envision with that. So, you know, we'll talk to you tonight about some of the key details. We want to give you time to review, review those details on your own time. We think half an hour is probably tight to talk about it all. So we are going to give you, I think tomorrow we have a memo ready to go that will show you some of the preliminary draft zoning, a little bit of the backup behind that, some of the explanation. So we are anticipating coming back to you on May 4th, your next work session, kind of a follow-up last discussion on the draft zoning. And after that, we think we'll be in position to prepare the part 1 of the EAF. And then your following regular meeting, we'd go ahead and get started on seeker with the declaration of lead agency. And then we're assuming that we'd be ready for the public hearing in June 8th, finish out the seeker process. And then that would be leaving you all in position to adopt both a negative declaration perhaps, and also the zoning ordinances themselves on June 22nd. So that's kind of the next steps timeline. It's obviously subject to change if you all feel that, more time is needed to review certain aspects, but this is kind of what we're working toward. So I think with that, on the next slide, we can dive in a little bit. I know when Simon was with you all last month in March, you covered, I think, pretty much all of these items and probably discussed some of them in greater detail. We wanted to move up the first 2 items. One is the creation of the Lower Beekman Avenue Design Standards overlay. And then the second is a package of development incentives and community benefits to, to kind of encourage investment and revitalization in the downtown, but also get community benefits on behalf of the village. These 2 items have generated the most discussion, required the most discussion among the steering committee. There's just a lot of details that we want to talk about with you. A lot of the other ones are a bit more straightforward, so we may get to them tonight, but we also feel that you've kind of talked a little bit about them previously, and we can also send you the package tomorrow. They'll be discussed in that as well. But we wanted to spend time on those first 2 items. So I'm going to turn it to Simon because he's really dug into a lot of the weeds, or the details, I should say, of the Lower Beekman Avenue overlay, as well as the development incentives.
All right, thanks, Susan. I want to just start by highlighting the work that has gone into this, in particular by the steering committee that we've been working with. We came to that group with some concepts from the comprehensive plan. Just as a reminder to everyone, that's where all this came from. All of these ideas emerged from that public planning process. But a lot of the details, we were really able to refine with the input of that steering committee, and that's gotten us to where we are today here. And as Susan said, these first 2 items, might require a bit more discussion from you all tonight, and maybe again on May 4th. So the first one here is creating design standards for that Lower Beekman Avenue stretch. And what really was behind this was an understanding that Upper Beekman has more of a sort of village downtown feel, more of a commercial feel. You get down toward the waterfront where Edge is coming into being down there. Again, more of a mixed use environment. And in between, you have this Lower Beekman stretch, which has the character of the images on the right side of the screen here, but it's all zoned C2, just like Upper Beekman is. And so the objective here is what zoning tools can we apply to that stretch of Lower Beekman to ensure that if there's new development there, sure, it might have the scale of other buildings in the C2, but can it also have design components that make sure that new development down here on Lower Beekman is in keeping with the historic character. And some of the key components of that include the setbacks of the buildings from the sidewalk that you see here, the landscaping in the front yards, oftentimes buildings with elevated stoops. We also get into issues like materiality and roof lines and things like that to ensure that any new development down here is somewhat in keeping. I'm going to go over some of the high level details here. and then we can pause at some point and stop for discussion if you all have any questions. But the zoning approach generally is to use two tools here. One is to establish architectural design standards for future development with using two building typologies, which we think are appropriate and consistent with what exists down here in Lower Beekman. And the first one, we have diagrams of these on the next couple of slides, is what we're calling a residential porch or stoop typology. And the second one is a neighborhood storefront typology. And then the second item here is general design standards that would apply across the board to new development in the Lower Beekman area. We'll talk about those in a few moments as well. So first on the residential porch or stoop building typology. And by the way, what we've tried to do here is something like design guidelines that a lot of municipalities have used in zoning codes, but with a little bit more detail to them that move in the direction of being like a form-based code that you've probably heard about in some other places, but not quite as restrictive as a full-on form-based code. So we've tried to strike a balance between providing enough guidance for new development without being too prescriptive. And you see some of the components in the diagram here that we're using in order to try to generate consistency with the historic character. One thing I'll highlight here is that you'll notice that the sort of new development here, this building here, it's of course bigger than the existing 2.5-story homes along Lower Beekman. I just want to point that out because that's what's allowed now. You're allowed now to go up to 45 feet and 4 stories. We're not proposing to reduce that height limit. It's really more about the sort of design characteristics and form characteristics of the building to be more consistent. So what that means is something that we call vertical articulation. The building's got a top, a middle, and a bottom that's clearly articulated. And the roof line in this alternative, the residential porch building, is a sort of a gabled or hipped or shed roof typology, which is similar to a lot of those existing buildings. Horizontal building articulation, what we mean by that is that if you were to have a development that was on a wide lot, say it was 2 or 3 existing parcels that were consolidated together, you don't want that to feel like one flat facade along the sidewalk. So that horizontal modulation requires that every 25 feet, part of the building bumps forward or bumps back so that it breaks it down more to the scale of those existing 25-foot parcels. Those bits have to bump out or back in order to create that articulation. And some other issues about making sure that there's a minimum amount of glazing so that the windows are creating transparency on the ground level. And of course that setback that has to be landscaped down here. And we're using a tool here, which we've used in other communities as well, which is a common tool in a zoning code is to have a minimum front yard setback. You have to be a minimum of X feet from the front lot line. But we've also added in here a maximum front yard setback so that on the one hand, you don't want a new building right up on the sidewalk. You want to provide that front yard, but you also don't want the building pushed way back into the rear yard and feeling like you've got a missing tooth on the block. So that's what this what we call a build-to zone is. There's both a minimum and a maximum front yard setback. So that's one of the building typologies. The other one we're calling a neighborhood storefront building typology. This is less common on Lower Beekman, but not entirely out of keeping with the character down there. There are some buildings like this that are more commercial in nature. And if someone were to come in with a building like this that comes down to the sidewalk and has a storefront, you would still want to make sure that it has that setback, that it sits within that build-to zone. You get a bit of a wider feel on the sidewalk. But then the other components are very similar, right? You have a bottom, a middle, and a top. And then you also have that what we call horizontal modulation, where one section of the building like this here could be a maximum of 25 feet wide, and then you've got to bump it back for a new section. So it starts to break down the scale for someone who's perceiving the building from the sidewalk. Break down that scale so it's more similar to the rhythm that you experience as you're walking down that sidewalk now with those existing 2.5-story buildings on 25-foot wide lots like these over here on the right. So that's the first component, those building typologies. And the second one are these overall design standards. I'm not going to go into all of the details of these. We went into them with the steering committee last week, and it stretched on to about 7 or 8 slides. But when we send our memo tomorrow with the details, it's all spelled out. Some of them are things that we've talked about. How do you break down the scale of a wider building so that it feels more in keeping with the same rhythm of those existing buildings? But also we get into materiality, windows, signage, and where parking can go on the site. So that's sort of a high level of the Lower Beekman design standards. The other big item that we think is good for discussion tonight, maybe I'll go through these and then pause and see if there are any questions on either of these two. And if there's still time, then we can circle back and go through the rest of the idea. So the development incentives, community benefits idea was also in the comprehensive plan. And this was viewed as a way to, on the one hand, incentivize development in areas where, as we were working on the plan and hearing from members of the community, there was a sense that there's a desire for investment in new development that's at an appropriate scale. But if you're incentivizing something, what can the village also get back in return? What community benefits make sense to include as part of that program, right? So you may be giving something to a developer, but the community is also getting something as well. We talked about where this could be applicable with the committee, and where we landed is that it really is only applicable within the C2 district. Back when we were working on the comprehensive plan, there were some other parts of the village where we didn't explicitly come out and say it's appropriate, but we left it more open. But as we dug into it, it really feels like the C2 downtown is the only place where this should be applied. We thought this should be by special permit to all of you, to the Village Board of Trustees. So if someone were to get one of these incentives, it would go before you first. And then the way that the system is outlined here is it's like a scoring system. If you get X number of points, or 15 points actually, in terms of the community benefits, then the trustees could grant some or all of the development incentives. And I'm going to outline what this scoring system is. And this is, we've gone through this with the committee in terms of what the components are. But if there's anything missing, this is an area where we definitely want feedback from the trustees. We don't want this to feel like it's a final and it's set in stone. For the community benefits, which I'll show on the next slide, we've broken them down into 3 levels. For working purposes, we're describing them as high value or priority. If you do a high value priority benefit, you would get 5 points. Moderate would be 3 points, and low is 1. The reason we say high value and priority is that there's something somewhat qualitative about this. There might be something that could cost a bit of money for a developer, and you want to give them credit for that. But there also may be something that is harder to quantify in terms of its cost. Or maybe it doesn't even have a very high cost, but it's a high priority for the village. And so there are issues like that or community benefits like that, where you might want to favor those a little bit more. So here on the next slide is the list of community benefits that we've gone through so far with the committee. And again, if there's other things that the trustees think we want to incentivize or encourage or encourage a developer to provide, we should talk through that. Or if there's something on here that we don't want to include, we want to talk about that as well. But it's things like providing or doing improvements to public open space, green building certification, providing affordable housing, And a really interesting one that we found elsewhere in your code that we think applies to the C2 is converting non-conforming uses. You've got, particularly on Clinton Street, a lot of those older legacy industrial uses that are pre-existing, but they're not permitted by the code right now. So they're a non-conforming use. And a lot of those sites were the ones that we had in mind back when we were working on the comprehensive plan, where there could be a great opportunity to turn those over to a new, mixed use building, for example, that's walkable to Sleepy Hollow's downtown, also walkable to the Tarrytown train station. So you see our first pass at how many points you get for each of these. And again, what we're looking at is you want to add these up to 15 points, right? So you could pick 3 of these 5-point items that get you to 15, right? So then you don't have to look at the rest of these. But there's also a lot of flexibility built in here. So you could do, you could get LEED silver and you could provide affordable housing, that gets you to 10. And then you can grab 2 items from the 3-point level, for example. A lot of different ways to get this, but we tried to find a simple system. The more complex the equation is, the harder it is for a developer to figure out how they can meet that goal.
Yeah, we wanted to strike that balance of getting, tangible benefits for the village, but to do it in a way that gives the developer, some flexibility to get there, but also some predictability. So it's not sort of a subjective list of do any of these things, but they don't know, well, how much do I have to do? What do I have to do? How is that going to be received by the village? This, telegraphs a bit, what some of the priorities are and how that would be viewed once it comes to you all. It's still ultimately, it's a discretionary special permit. So it would be something that you all would consider, but this we think helps guide the developer as well as all of you.
And so if someone went through this list of community benefits and they demonstrated with their special permit that they were able to tally up 15 points, they would be able to, or you would be able to grant them some or all of these development incentives. Again, this is only in the C2. And there's a height bonus from 4 stories to 5, a reduction in the parking requirement, which we think is reasonable given the potential walkability to the Tarrytown train station. A bit of a clarification here in the area and bulk coverage on the maximum lot coverage, but really the bonus here is an FAR increase, a floor area ratio increase from 1.4 to 1.75, really accounts for the extra story in height. And then again, a bit of a cleanup item in the area and bulk table to add a multifamily dwelling here with side yard setbacks in the underlying zoning, but then giving a bonus which would reduce those setbacks, which is similar to what is required for commercial and mixed use buildings in the C2. So basically, if you were to do a multifamily building in the C2 without providing community benefits, you would have to meet these setbacks. But if you did provide the benefits, it would make it a little bit easier to do that development. So that was a mouthful. Why don't we pause there and see if anyone has any comments or questions on either of these two. Ken, let me know if you want me to unshare so you can see everyone's faces, or if we should keep this up so that we can go back to earlier slides.
Why don't you unshare so we can see everyone? It's a little easier to see where there's a hand up, for example. And then if we need to, we can always pop it back up on the screen, or you can pop it back up on the screen.
And the one thing I'll say just before we dive in, we are happy to stay as long as you all will have us tonight. But the reason we sort of penciled in that May 4th date is if you only want to give us so much time and you want to circle back and talk about all this, we want to make ourselves available to come back another night as well.
Thank you.
Monopolize you.
Don't worry, we won't let that happen. But obviously this is a very serious topic, and one that we want to make sure that we spend as much time as we need and get it right. One thing I did want to do before we move on is just highlight the effort that's been underway to get it to this point and who's involved in this. And I'd ask Jared and to highlight some of the other members of the steering committee. This is not a consultant driven process. A lot of assistance from you guys, but this is incorporates the steering committee is members of our community. And Jared, can you run through some, give us a better sense of names, please? But if you unmute yourself, it'll actually work even better. So
Trying to pull up everyone's names just to make sure that I have everybody. All right. So, I mean, first, you know, and actually Diana is present on the phone right now, but Diana is on our steering committee, Diana Loha. We also have Trustee Spiro. Just trying to go through exactly who else is included. And Simon and Susan, you can help me out.
I've got it up, Jared.
Simon's got it.
Do you have it up?
Yeah. So Diana and Trustee Spiro, as Jared said, Matthew Brennan, who's on the planning board, Tim Judge is a former member of the Zoning Board of Appeals, Sean McCarthy, village architect and building inspector, Jared, of course, Anthony Giaccio, who's on tonight, and Clinton Smith, village council. I think I got everyone there.
Yeah.
That's right. So
Thanks.
yeah, I mean, we've spent a lot of time discussing design guidelines, focusing on Lower Beekman, and then issues around you know, where C2 is appropriate as well, which was actually, I think, a really good conversation. And there was discussion around like removing C2 from certain parts of the village, but I think we quickly realized that probably wouldn't benefit those particular areas. And you know, one of them is Clinton Street, which was, I think, discussed extensively. There's a lot of existing industrial use there, which doesn't seem appropriate within such short distance to you know, existing multifamily. Though we want to retain the ability of, you know, the potential for job creation, introducing other uses like low impact industry and light industry, sort of along the lines of a makerspace, which we see sort of emerging in the Hudson Valley, that can function alongside multifamily and even potentially hospitality in a really interesting way. So I think those discussions are coming, right, when you guys present the next at the next time. But it's been, yeah, I think it's been a great group. We're excited to get some of these changes passed, I think, because they're pretty transformative.
Yeah, we've only met 3 times, but it feels like a lot more because they've been really good discussions. I mean, I think collectively have spent a fair number of hours. So it's been really helpful. We've kind of moved the needle a good amount with each meeting.
So I know that speaking for myself, I'm going to want to look over the materials that you're going to send us, so I have an opportunity to kind of read it the way I like, which is with a pen in my hand, to write questions and comments and no and yes and those kinds of things. So, but taking advantage of the fact that you guys are with us tonight, are there additional questions or any questions from members of the board right now? I know we're all going to be looking forward to the next session, but anybody have any specific questions right now?
Yeah, I do. Susan, Simon, Jared, I think that was a fantastic presentation. By the way, Simon and Susan, I'm Tom Andrus, also a new member of the board, along with Jared. So this is a little bit new to me, but I was aware that it was going on, and I'm also aware of other initiatives that might dovetail, and I want to bring those up. But you did ask for suggestions, perhaps on the value propositions, and a thought here, I think everybody would agree, is the need to connect Upper Beekman with Lower Beekman and beyond down to Edge on Hudson, and create foot traffic and create some flow. And I'm wondering if a higher value proposition on your chart might be creating that foot traffic. So a business, a storefront that would, encourage people to walk. Let's say, not a dentist, right? A dentist is going to be a one-stop shop. You come, you finish, you leave. So it's a business that creates foot traffic, I would think, would be another way of getting to that 15 score. I did mention that I think there was another initiative, and Ken and any other member of trustees, correct me if I'm wrong here, the floating zone. Now, is this consistent with the floating zone concept? Is it in addition to, or is it instead of? How does it fit with the floating zone?
That's a good question. I think we intended that it would work with the floating zone. However, I'm not sure if you would want, nor would it be possible if you had a site in the floating zone and also in the C2, could you double up? That's not something I think you'd probably want or may even be feasible. So we should look at that. And it's a good point, and see if there's any possibility that there would be that overlap, and maybe we carve out, we don't let floating zone sites be subject to these incentives, or maybe not all of them, because of that potential to double up. The assumption that they're already subject to incentives.
And we just, Tom, or other folks, just a quick overview of the floating zone. We try to be really cautious when we put it in, so it only applies to village-owned properties. So there, frankly, are not a lot. And one very obvious one on, or maybe not so obvious, but on Beekman itself, is the former UAW building, which is owned by a village-controlled entity, the LDC. That's an obvious one. Where the existing DPW is, that's another obvious one. They're within this zone. The other thing to keep in mind is that the benefits of that can be conveyed by designating a property part as a floating zone are not as of right. Meaning you can't just apply for it, and because you have this and this, you'll automatically get it. So we could prevent the doubling up simply by saying, no, you're getting the benefits there. But
in your review,
yeah. So it's not a lot of places are eligible, and in the end, the board we would have to decide that we were going to convey it to folks. So presumably we, or any future board would be paying attention and saying, let's do this the right way.
And on the active ground floor, our generating foot traffic, I think that's also a very good point. We wrote development incentives for Pleasantville a few years ago, and that was one of their package. And I think we specified the types of uses. We didn't want to be too specific, but basically customer-oriented businesses that generate, pedestrian activity.
And one way to do that would be to, if it's a particular ground floor commercial use, you could potentially waive or reduce the parking requirement on it. So if a multifamily building were to go in and have a coffee shop on the ground floor, or say some boutique clothing shop on the cellar level, right? And there's like a walk down from the sidewalk, you're activating the street, but you don't necessarily want to hit that developer with a full-on parking requirement, because then it would make it impossible for the developer perhaps to provide even that parking if they're on a narrow lot. So we have, and we kind of discussed this I gave a presentation on form-based codes and design guidelines last week, and we discussed how our existing zoning has sort of perverse incentives that yield like a very specific product, right? So if you have a developer that's not very creative, they can, as of right, create something that is not very additive for our downtown, particularly from a visual perspective. So that's really the impetus behind having design guidelines and a visual code, because you can just show the developers sort of exactly what's desired, so they don't have to really guess, right? Which hopefully speeds up the permitting process and gets us new projects. So
I was just translating the not very additive in my head, which means to me, it's like, what the heck is that?
yeah, what
were they
happened
doing?
there? Who did
let
it and
them
ran?
do that? You know, which is, I think what, you know, where we're trying to go. I mean, there's a couple of things. One is to encourage more investment in our downtown, Clinton Street, some of those large lots with industrial uses. There's some potential real opportunities there. That's part of it. And the other part of it is not to destroy what our downtown looks like. And I think somewhere between, I like the idea that, I like the fact that the steering committee is heading towards some of the elements of form-based zoning, because I think that now that I have a better understanding of what it actually is, thank you, Jared, it is more in keeping with what we want. You know, the setbacks, the maximum setback, you know, those kind of things, I think help preserve the visual character of our downtown, and I think that that's really important. It's the incentive sides of it are going to be things like lowering parking requirements, recognizing that you've got a lot that is like the same size as all the other ones next to it, and they don't have parking. They never did. They were built before there was a need. How do you require this person? You know, they're never going to be able to develop a site. So anyway, I'm enthused by the progress that you guys are making with the steering committee.
Hi, this is Sam. I just wanted to mention, yeah, I was very impressed with your presentation. It was, I think, very well thought out. And I think, yeah, you know, as you heard, there's a couple of comments here around things that we can add on to it. So I think it's probably worthwhile to meet again with you at least once more, to give us an opportunity, at least myself, an opportunity to digest what you presented today, and then see if I have anything, because I like to process stuff a bit.
Yeah, understood.
There's a lot there, but I think it's really, I think it's great. I think it's great planning. I mean, and it's going to really help the village.
Yeah, we, you know, as we were getting ready for this evening, I think we realized that, you know, from working with all of you in the past, you know, we want the feedback from you to really dig into the details, and we knew that you were going to want that as well. And so we wanted to you know, give you a sense of where we are right now. But as Susan said, we have a you know, sort of a much more detailed, you know, a memo of each of these individual changes that we'll send around tomorrow morning, so that, you know, as Ken said, you all can mark it up with a pen, and when we come back, you know, I'm sure you'll tell us, as Ken said, in capital letters, no on some items.
Yeah, and it also details the stuff that we haven't talked about tonight, which I know you've talked about last month. I know perhaps newer folks weren't in that discussion, but those are a little bit more straightforward. You know, there's zoning text changes. There's a bit about parking, a little bit about a quick map change that was in the comp plan that I think was quickly agreed to by the steering committee. So all of that should be a bit more straightforward. Doesn't mean that we don't want your comments on that either, but we wanted to take the time tonight on this open discussion.
So I just want to add that I really love all of the suggestions that you brought to us tonight. And I wonder if, you know, just thinking ahead, once it's been once we've agreed on it, how do we let developers and small business owners and people who want to, maybe fix up some of the housing stock that we have, how do we move forward, letting them know, hey, we've done this to make it easier for you to come to our village.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's something that we've been talking about in other communities as well. Okay, once you do these great things in terms of a plan or zoning, how do you spread the word? And so I think there's a minimal, at the beginning, it's PR. It's, you should at least put out a press release, get the word out. You might think about, like a downtown developer summit. Maybe it's virtual, might have to be virtual, but something to just let people know that this is something that you did. This is a change that has been made, and it's about educating them, but it's also about letting them know of the opportunity. So I think that's kind of the next phase, is on the implementation side, is really almost doing like a roadshow to really spread the word that you've been open for business, and now it might be even a bit easier for some developers to kind of get in the door and bring something to the village that would be really great.
People's eyes glaze over when it comes to zoning, but it could actually be pretty fun.
Well,
before any on that, Jared.
Yeah. Before any of these eyes glaze over, we're going to say thank you for the presentation this evening, and we look forward to getting the materials from you tomorrow and getting back together again and hearing the continuing progress of the steering committee.
Great.
So thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks.
Good to see you.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Quick question I think this is for Paula. Was there a recording made of the planning board session, or should I follow up with the planning board secretary?
Most likely there was, but
Okay.
it's best to ask her. She would know for sure.
Okay, because we could circulate that to the trustees that weren't able to attend on last Thursday. Yep.
And I think it would be really helpful.
It should also be available on our website.
Okay.
Great. Okay, we're going to move into budget presentations, and we're going to start this evening with Deanna Loha, our community liaison, and take it away, Deanna.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. Yes, thank you so much. Yes, I want to start with my budget. Let me see if I can actually turn on my camera right now. Just give me 1 second. So my budget right now, I want to go over one of the things I want to present it is my current budget right now for the year is a total of 2,200. As we can see on page 25 of the mayor budget. The 1,000 is for community outreach office supplies, and the other part is for community outreach contractual expenses, which is 1,200. Requesting an extra $5,000, which is for community outreach. What do I mean with that? It is one of the things since I started my full-time position with the village, which is in February of last year, and right when the pandemic started, was that we need to increase find better ways to communicate, especially with the Hispanic Latino community, since our 60% of our population is Latino and Hispanic. So in order to do that, there's a lot of things that we'll be able to concentrate. And we want to, in order to do that, I have created, which is Community Liaison Committed, which is right now of 8 members. One of them is myself, Kirsten Harris, Cecilia Black, Effie Phil Staley, Lina Tapia, Rene Leon, Steve Conchacela Guzman, Luis Yubisaca, which is a Sleepy Hollow police officer that just joined us now. And we also have Kevin Moya, which is a Sleepy Hollow police officer that it will be confirmed. Our committee is trying to have diversity there. And the whole goal of our Complete Count Committee is to create ways to communicate and to create events and programs that will be positive, that will create positive relationship between the local government, a school, home, and nonprofit organizations. With this $5,000, we're planning to have at least one event each month. We're gonna start May 1st is our first event that we're planning to do, which is gonna be making flowers and papers for Mother's Day. But this purpose of this event is to just a pop-up tenant, everybody is welcome to come in. But out of that event, we're trying to find communities, ask them, what is the next event that they want to do it? What are the community needs that they need? What is the things that they would like to see changes? What is the best way to communicate them? So we want to get more connections between the community, the local governments, and as well as the churches. Have events, not only besides having type of Zumba, jury events, anything. And I'm just mentioning this as an example because all these events will be created based on what the community requests, based on what the community is asking for it. So besides that, just to give an example. So for example, if I do, for example, a Zumba night on a Saturday night for the community where everybody's welcome, we want to ask the community also what kind of workshop they would love to hear. If domestic violence is an issue, if racism is an issue, if health is an issue, of any issue that they like to, we would love to create some type of topics and bring it to the community, this type of workshops. We either will do it after our event or we'll do it before our event. We want to make sure that the voices of these people are being heard. And we want to make sure that that what is the best way to communicate it. In order to find out that is by having more community involvement. So this is basically what we're looking to do. So if we take the $5,000 and we divide it by 12 months, we're looking maybe around $400 in expenses a month to cover expenses or to bring specialists or to bring teachers or anything like that to bring this type of help for our community. So that's what I'm requesting it in terms of for doing community outreach events. I'm also requesting for the wishing wall. As you can see, the wishing wall, we did it right on the pandemic. We also got an award of celebrating right now. Arts Westchester Arts give us a recognition to Village of Sleepy Hollow for what we created. And therefore, we want to keep the momentum for it. And I'm also requesting there is a $2,450. Out of that is going to be used to create banners, to put it in the inner village so people can know where is located, to give them an updated option where we're going to have a QR code where it's going to be used to tell them where it is. It's going to take us to our social media pages such as Instagram, Facebook. And also we planning to do a photo contest to get more community involved in that. So we're asking for $1,650. And also we have the Sleepy Hollow Festival Culture, which is already existed already. That it happened back in 2019. That is already on page 32 of the mayor budget. Normally we, as the village support, it has gave us $10,000. Out of that, we have 4,000 come out of sponsors and vendor fees is $1,000. So that's already existing. So therefore we're not asking already because I just want to make it and keep it for the record. And we planning to do it also again, the Sleepy Hollow Festival Culture. We planning to do that in September 18. More to come, obviously, as we get close to the date. And part of this budget, also, we planning to start increasing a little more of technology use, such as to keep our community updated on future events coming in the community, as well as creating volunteers. A lot of people, mothers, the schools are requesting for younger teenagers to do some type of volunteer work. Even themselves, I have parents have called me and say, how can I be a volunteer? I can do anything. I'm bored at home. I want to do something. I want to get to know more the community. I want to be helpful. So we want to start creating this type of events, and therefore we're creating which is called Horseman Volunteer Teams, where we're going to be signing up people. Whoever wants to become a volunteer, so this team, we creating through a Facebook page, through social media. where people can sign up and be a horseman volunteer. And they will get, once they sign up, they're gonna get an email invitation for all the events that they come in and where they want to participate for this. As a result of that, we're gonna need some type of sign up for volunteers, and as well as for linking tree, which gives them information or everything, something that we don't have right now in the in our page, on our village page. So those little things, and then we're looking for $430. This is annual membership that we'll be able to use for this type of events. That's basically what I'm requesting right now.
Thank you for that presentation, Deanna. Any questions from members of the board?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I like your proposal, Diana. I really like the term that you came up with, horseman volunteers. That's pretty cool. Yeah, what I will do is I'll touch base with you offline just to give you some feedback around your proposal. Okay.
Sure, no problem. Even though it's horseman volunteers, everybody in any community is welcome to be part of the horseman volunteers. Just to make that clear, it's not just the Sleepy Hollows, Tarrytown are welcome. Everybody who will love to become part of horseman volunteers. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
One thing that I know will definitely add to the budget for you is one of these little things here so that you don't have to sit in the dark when you're on these calls, okay?
I did place some orders already. I'm using some of the budgets with cameras and everything. We said it, we're working on it.
Yeah, for a minute, I thought you were talking from your car,
Yeah.
I just wanted to, I guess, applaud Diana for coming up with some pretty amazing ideas. And I hope the folks that were on earlier asking about participatory budgeting were listening to Diana's budget presentation, because it's the closest thing I think that we've potentially ever come to some sort of participatory budgeting. And so I'm really excited about the Horseman Volunteers concept. This is actually something that's happening across the United States with mutual aid networks and civilian corps, right? Where, people in communities are just kind of, they're bored. I mean, they are bored and they do want to get involved. And if we do come together, the effort to make positive change, right, is less, right? Because we have more, we have more hands on deck. So I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, well, what I would say with regards to community participation is that that door has always been open. If you want to be involved, just raise your hand, come to a meeting, join a committee. It doesn't cost anything to do that.
Yep.
Yes, I do want to bring, like somebody mentioned before, having a budget for participation, wherever is listened to it, and they will all to bring ideas. They're welcome to come in. We're looking for people to give us idea. We're looking to create that. We're trying to, one of this part of this complete can committed is to hear the voices of the people, what they want to see the changes in the community. In order to see that, we cannot knock doors and ask them. So by creating this type of events, we'll bring the community together and we're going to ask them to put their comments in our comment box, what they want to see next, what they would love to see, what changes, where is the gap, what are we missing? So we can start working on that. That's the whole point of these community initiatives that we're planning to do.
Great. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you.
And we look forward to continuing to work on this. We're going to move on to our next budget presentation, and that's from Chief Boetti for the Sleepy Hollow Police Department budget. Chief.
Good evening, Mayor, Board of Trustees. Just want to tell Trustee Rodriguez and Andrews, congratulations. I look forward to working with both of you in the
Andrews. Chief.
Andrews, yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief. Good evening to you.
Thank you, Anthony.
The first line we're requesting an increase is the 421 line. That's on page 14 of the mayor's budget. It's That's a marginal increase of $3,000. That's to cover an additional Wi-Fi line for a camera in our village. The next request is on the IT consultants line. It's roughly $7,000, and that's to enhance our scheduling system at this point and making it more of a record management system. Our current record management system is approximately 19 years old. It's outdated. We've had several proposals of the new systems, a startup price of $150,000 to $50,000. This will be a stopgap until we can find something that suits our needs with not as heavy a price tag. Then another request is our professional development line, it's the 471 line. And that's to include 2 additional trainings this year, one for implicit bias and the second for de-escalation training. And that does fall in line with our police reform collaborative plan. The next request is on page 61, as far as the personnel line. Last year, we decided to forego a sergeant's position to make up a budget due to the amount of money we lost from the county tax. I am requesting to put that back in. That line alone, that increase would be $6,360, but I would also want to fill that sergeant who would be a patrolman 1 to the uncertified police officer in January. So it'd only be half of the 55,000, so approximately 27,842.50 for an additional increase combined of 44,202.50. And that was pretty much all the increases I had requested.
So Chief, can you just break that down a little bit more for us in terms of, like, are you creating a new position, or I'm not understanding what your budget request is for.
Right, so we traditionally have had 5 road sergeants to make up for the loss of revenue due to the COVID. We decided not to promote 1 sergeant for last year. I'm requesting that sergeant be placed back into the budget.
Okay.
For the position.
And then the cost for that would be an additional, what, 44,000 you said?
44,000, then replacing that sergeant with an uncertified police officer, meaning putting somebody to the academy in January instead of June.
Okay.
The other line that was increased 25,000 or requested for an increase 25,000 was our overtime line, and that's due to several things. The additional training, not only the implicit bias and the de-escalation training, but also procedural justice training, which was recommended by President Obama's 21st Century Policing Task Force. We don't have to pay for the training because we have 3 instructors right now, so it'd be in-house training done in conjunction with Tarrytown, who also has 3 certified trainers. But of course, it is a 2-day training. It is going to incur overtime. And also, we are going to use a new strategy or enhance a strategy called community policing strategy called Team Beat Policing. And what it does is we're going to try to alleviate, right now we have 3 officers. We'll try to have 3 officers on the road, minimum of 2. We would like to make sure that we always have 3, taking 1 out of answering radio runs. And their sole responsibility is to go around and talk with the community, find out what their needs are, what services they want, and then the issues they have. They would then come back to the sergeants in the meeting, and we would discuss what the problems are and come up with a strategy on how to solve it. Which again does align with our police reform collaborative plan. And those were the major increases for 2021, 2022. Any
Thank you,
questions?
Chief. None from me.
Thanks, Chief. Any additional questions for the chief at this point? Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, we've got one additional budget presentation, and that's from the village clerk, Ms. McCarthy Tompkins. You're up.
Yes, thank you. You can hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
So as you know, I have two budgets. One is for the clerk's department, the other one for the registrar's department. I'm looking to just make one addition to the clerk's department. I'm not looking to make any other changes. And that would be to take the seasonal person that I've had on and off for the last few years and make that position a permanent part-time, not to exceed 17 hours a week. I had emailed you regarding that request, but if you'd like me to elaborate, please let me know.
I've got your email. Does anybody have any questions for Paul at this point about that request?
No, Paul, I also received that email and understand the request.
Thank you.
Somebody's dog wants to speak, but other than that,
Dogs, you believe that?
all right, then good. Then thank you
Sure.
for that presentation.
Yes, thanks for
that request, and we'll consider that along with the others that we've received tonight and over the past few weeks.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you.
we're going to move on to our next discussion item for this evening, and that's Mr. Giaccio. We received a request from the local scouting organization. I'm purposely saying scouting because one of the changes has been to change from the Boy Scouts and to being scouting and including boys and girls, young men, young women in their organization. So a pretty profound change from their 100-year history in this country anyway. But the local group is requesting permission to do a fundraising event. Mr. Giaccio, want to walk us through that, please?
Yes, because of COVID last year, they weren't able to do their typical fundraising events, which I believe one of them is the Hayride, where they volunteer and then get some funding for that. They want to do a food truck event on Beekman Avenue between 5 and 10 on a Thursday in May. They haven't chosen the date yet because they wanted approval from the village board to do this. I think it's something that might be nice for the community to come out and enjoy, and also raise money for the scouts. So if you want my opinion, I think it's a no-brainer, but that's up to you guys. But it would be up to you to approve.
So, Mr. Giaccio, just your opinion on that. It's a no-brainer to say no or a no-brainer to say yes?
A no-brainer to say yes.
I just wanted to clarify that. You know, we've had some discussion about foot traffic and other things, and I just I would like to support this. I think also we should point out that the scouts, the boys and girls, are not actually going to man the food trucks. These would be professional food trucks, and I think they get a piece of whatever their revenue is, and that's where the fundraising comes from. So don't worry, but it's not going to be a 10-year-old pulling up in a panel truck and trying to make burgers. And it just sounds like it'd be kind of nice as the weather warms up to have an event back on Beekman Avenue in some way that people, it's not indoors, it's outdoors, and you know, as we start to open up again from this pandemic nightmare, it'd be fun to get together again that way. So my one vote would be to say, yeah, go for it, guys.
I just have a couple questions. Anthony, can you explain, do you know what the logistics are? Like where on Beekman Avenue? Will there be any partial street closure, you know, loss of parking for the time that the event's happening? Or did the parking lot? Can you give us a little detail?
I think that would be up to us to help them coordinate, but my guess would be to have it in the village parking lot across the street here, like we did with the hayride when we had those.
Okay.
There's really little parking on one side of the lot at night, so I don't think it'll conflict with anything.
Okay.
Great idea.
Could we discuss that further? Because there may be other locations that might be superior to the lot, even though I understand the logistics in the lot are easier, but let's talk about it. We don't have to talk about it now.
Go ahead. What's your?
Oh, okay. An interesting location might be in front of the Van Tassel block. And potentially on that part of Cortland that we discussed in a prior meeting. You know, that dog leg on Cortland that connects to Beekman. So that would be kind of a cool or interesting test on what it would look like if we were to really activate that block of Beekman and have a lot of sort of, you know, pedestrian activity. But we could talk about that further and see if the logistics are worth it. Yeah.
I guess my only concern would be taking away parking spots from people who live there.
Right.
I mean, Van Tassel, I mean, I know it's really tough for them to find parking as it is. So I mean, that would just be my 2 cents.
Yeah, I agree. And also with the businesses down there, there's a new restaurant, there's the pizzeria. I would be leery about taking away parking spaces on street.
Is it one evening, just to confirm? We're talking about one evening. Okay.
Yeah. And I like the idea of trying to activate different parts of the village at different times. It'd be fun to see what we could do on Valley Street, for example, and what we could do adjacent to Sykes Park and, you know, different places. I would say for this one, you know, they would like to do something relatively soon. So I you know, let's, as we look at some of the other activities that we've talked about recently, let's look at trying to get away from the standard Upper Beekman kind of event space and or Horan's Landing is the other one, but somewhere else. And it's like, okay, well, let's test some of these things out. In this particular case, I'd say, look, let's keep it simple and go with what we logistically we know we can pull off. And then I think for their sake, the place that we know is most likely to be successful. So it has that the outcome that they're looking for. So all the vendors make money, they get their share of it. We all eat well, and everybody goes home happy. So.
Yeah. Well, I vote in favor as well, and also would recommend just hosting it in the municipal lot.
So why don't we do this, since it's a work session and we're not going to break into a special session to approve this, we could put it on for next week for approval. We can, Mr. Giaccio, I think the consensus is to, like, yeah, go ahead with it. Sounds good. We'd like to see how this could work out. And start talking to them about an appropriate time and the likely appropriate space. And then we can get a sense about what we can do with some other events. And then we'll put it on for approval for next week. Good with everybody? Okay, great. Last discussion item for the evening is we got a request for an Arbor Day event, a ceremony. Mr. Giaccio?
Yeah, I think the garden club, the Phillips Manor Garden Club is looking for an opportunity to plant a couple trees and have an Arbor Day event. Arbor Day is on April 30th. One of the trees, I believe they want to do at the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. But the other one, it's not quite clear where they want to plant a tree. One of the concerns is that they would want to plant it on the Riverwalk along Riverside Drive. There's several issues with planting a tree there. The village staff has not approved this. I just wanted you to be aware of that. And we're recommending that it not be planted along the Riverwalk. One of the reasons is there's electrical lines there and it wouldn't be appropriate to have a tree there. But I don't think there's a problem with the event itself, but planting a tree along the Riverwalk is problematic.
Yeah, I agree with that, Anthony. I don't think we should be encouraging any additional plantings along the Riverwalk. In fact, we should probably be discouraging them. Yeah.
Sorry, Tom.
I agree.
Yeah, it's the Riverwalk is a designed environment. You know, I thought the folks that we hired and the lay committee, the volunteers that participated in that entire process did a really great job. And we have this beautiful addition to the village. We don't want to come in and start changing it, certainly not so quickly. It was designed to be what it is, and we should respect that. And I think it's great the way it is. So in terms of an Arbor Day event, yes, of course, that would be highly appropriate and good thing for us to do. And I would just say, fine, the ceremony can be, the event itself can be in various places around the village that have been outlined, but I would find another spot. If they want to plant a tree in the cemetery, okay. Obviously, that's up to the cemetery. And if there's another spot in the village, we should find one that's more appropriate than that.
Just a quick question about, I guess, the playground in front of Morse. We don't have control over that playground. Is that the school? Yeah, because there was a tree removed there. And I think that's a fantastic spot. It's right in the center of town. And there's literally a spot where there was a large tree that probably should get a new tree. And then, of course, we have empty tree pits in a number of locations as well, which might definitely, they want a tree. So
yeah, and on the Beekman thing, it raised an interesting issue. You know, over the years, we've started having problems with the trees that are on Beekman Avenue because the root systems have started to grow into sewer lines and, you know, wastewater lines and so on, and cause all kinds of issues. And one of the ideas that's been kicked around or introduced anyway was don't do tree pits, do
planters.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was going to say, you know, the big giant pots, planters. And then when the tree gets to be a certain size and it's outgrowing the planter, then you move it, you permanently plant it in another appropriate location and put another one in, so that you continue the trees, but your the stewardship is a little bit different, you know, thinking about the entire environment where that tree would be.
if they want to plant it on Beekman, I would just encourage them to touch base with the Public Spaces Council, because they did engage, I forget if he was an arborist or more along the lines of a landscaper, but he was consulting with them on what kinds of trees should be planted on Beekman Avenue. And so, I mean, I don't know one tree. I mean, I know some trees, but I don't know what a young Acer saccharum is. So it would just be a question of, is that the appropriate place for that kind of tree? So it would be great if they talk to the PSC first.
Good thought. Well, let's follow up those. Again, I think consensus is, yes, we approve. Go ahead and do this. And Mr. Giaccio, reach out and say, we need to explore what would an appropriate place would be to plant a new tree. Okay.
Yep. By the way, May 1st, we're going to do our annual cleanup day. We're going to do it in the downtown, and we have looked at the idea of planting a tree as part of the Arbor Day festivities. So we talked about that today. So more to come on that.
Okay. All right. If not anything else on this issue, then we've completed our agenda for the evening. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for everybody who participated in the public hearing, and to all of our presenters tonight. Our numbers are, there's only one number that really matters right now, and that's, or worries me right now, and that is our COVID positive numbers. We're hovering in the right around 40, 41, sort of staying there. It's like, hey, folks, wear a mask, be safe. Let's start driving those down as we come out of this. And please get vaccinated if you haven't already. It's open for everybody. And with that, I'll say good night, be well, be safe, and I look forward to seeing you all again very soon.
Night,
Good night.
everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.